Hi, and thanks for watching and being with me today. I want to talk about something that I get a lot of. I get phone calls from people who've taken the bar exam and failed it using another course. And I get phone calls from people that have taken the bar exam maybe years ago and been successful but hated the process and the experience. And one of the questions that I sometimes ask, although sometimes I just probably wisely keep it to myself, is to say to those individuals, why were your expectations so low? Why did you settle for a course that didn't really meet your needs? And it got me to thinking about why it is that our expectations for a bar review course are generally so low. In other words, I think most people really only expect that a bar review course will provide them with some outlines. It'll provide them with some not very compelling or helpful lectures. It'll provide some sample questions, maybe with answers, maybe not, and very little structure beyond that. And maybe a good, attaboy, go get them, pat on the back, and then you're done. And that seems to be pretty much all that people expect from a bar review. But we offer an awful lot more than that, and I'm really surprised at why people don't expect more. And then I started thinking, is there an analogy in any other industry that would help explain or give some understanding to why this occurs? And I thought about the computer industry maybe 20, 25 years ago. 20 years ago or 25 years ago, people had a very low expectation of what a personal computer could do. Most of us typed in command lines in something called DOS, and many of you probably don't even know what that is now. But we had PCs, and we didn't expect our PCs to work very well. We expected them to crash on a regular basis. We expected them to be slow. We expected minimal, really, usefulness, and we expected them to be very expensive. And that was the expectation, and that's what people seemed to settle for at that time. And then along came these two guys in Northern California, Wozniak and Jobs, and they had an idea for something that was a little different. It was visual instead of typing in words. It was more aesthetically pleasing. It ran faster, it crashed less, it started up easier, and it cost about the same or maybe even just a little less than the traditional IBM personal computer of its era. And of course it was an Apple computer. And more today, people buy Apple products than they buy PCs, but for very long the level of expectation was so low in the computer industry that even though Apple had a vastly superior product, even at the beginning, people continued to buy the old standby. They bought the product that didn't work so well, that crashed and burned, and I don't need to tell you all the things that happened with Windows Vista, or Windows XP, whatever it might have been. And that really strikes me as being a good analogy for what goes on in the bar review. When I think about what the big bar review companies are good at, here's what comes to mind. They're really great at marketing. They're pretty good at just assembling material and putting it out there. And they're very good at making great connections with law schools and law firms. Those are the things that they do incredibly well. They are wonderful in helping at the law school level. They provide lots of money and resources. And they're wonderful at helping large law firms and doing altruistic things. But if you're taking the bar exam, I'm not sure that's really the criteria that you want for the course that you're working with. In other words, there's no emphasis on teaching. There's no emphasis on personal attention. There's no use of technology. I mean, we have been historically the first into almost every piece of technology used these days, whether it's the iPods or now today iPads. It's the use of learning technology. That's not part of what the big courses do. And people seem to accept and expect that there wouldn't be any of that. But you see, here's the interesting thing. Just as the Apple founders knew that there were all sorts of new and interesting and useful technologies that could be gathered together to benefit the consumer, we also know that in education today there are all sorts of new and interesting and useful ways to learn. We know more things today about nutrition, about exercise, about meditation and relaxation therapies. We know about test anxiety. We know more about how people learn and how they don't learn. We understand more today about memorization and its limits. We know more about the brain and how it absorbs material and then gives that material back. We certainly know more about how to write more effectively and how to be more organized in our writing than we did 20 or 30 years ago. And yet, the vast majority of bar reviews today still teach the same way that they did in 1960 or 1970. Nothing's changed for them. And yet today, in this era, we have all sorts of new technologies, new ways of learning, new science about learning that we bring into our course and integrate every day in what we do. I'm constantly reading and researching and talking to people who are at the cutting edge of the worlds of technology and education. And those two worlds are really coming together. They're really beginning to give us an insight into how people learn and how people take standardized tests. Why would you expect or settle for a course that doesn't give you that edge? Now, just like Apple and IBM back in the day, we have a very small market share. That's okay. We don't need to service everybody. In fact, we probably couldn't. We have limits just like Apple had limits in their day. But still, I really pause when I think about people who just don't expect to get much from their bar review, but are willing to pay a premium for that. You know, you can pay the same amount or less and get all of the access to the latest thoughts about teaching, the latest thoughts about learning for standardized testing, the best summaries of the law, questions, practice answers, explanations, and one-on-one service, all for the same price. So why would you expect anything less? It seems to me that it's something worth considering as you make a decision about a bar review that you want to take. If you'd like to know more about that, I invite you to give me a call or to email us, and we'll be glad to talk about some of the new things, and some of the exciting things, and some of the things that have given us by far the highest pass rate for any jurisdiction that we teach. Because ultimately, I think that's what you need to expect, is that a bar review will help you pass your bar. And if your bar reviews only got a 40 or 50% pass rate, as the big bar reviews do in almost every jurisdiction, then isn't it time to expect something more from your bar review? Shouldn't you expect something more like Celebration Bar Review? Thanks.